And I'm not actually sharing my screen yet either, um, just in case you were looking for a screen share. All right, so this week on the Forex Factory calendar, I kind of, well, I covered the whole calendar on Monday, but now things that we have to look forward to are going to be the EU news and the US news that's coming out tomorrow. Those are going to be items that are in orange and red when you look at the Forex Factory calendar. So we just want to make sure that we're all aware of those news items. And those are the news items on Monday that I mentioned were coming out within that volatility hour. So that time frame right before the market opens for New York. All of these news items are going to be coming out, and that will just add extra volatility to the market. Um, Also, I want you guys to be paying attention to the CPI data and the unemployment claims. We'll be able to go through all of that stuff on Friday's Zoom call. And on Friday's Zoom call, we'll also talk more about the GBP news, the Euro summit, and then also the US news that's coming out on Friday morning. Um, we'll go through all of those things, talk about how they're really going to be impacting the market, the economy, um, and just how things run from here on out. Here on out, meaning definitely the end of 2020. We only have about 3 weeks left. Um, and then going into about the first half of 2021. So, um, as we look forward to um, 2021, there are several things that are going on in the news right now that are going to be impacting those things. So, the first is COVID. COVID isn't or hasn't gone away, isn't going away anytime soon. Even with a vaccine, it's important that everyone realizes that um, this isn't going to be one of those things that goes away. Eventually, it will be treated somewhat similar to the flu, if not with a little more relaxed protocol. But just know that when it comes to traveling, when it comes to moving around, the rules are still going to be pretty um, consistent with the way that they are now as far as mask wearing. So I don't want you guys to get your hopes up or to feel disappointed whenever um, they start rolling out the vaccine. The masks aren't going to completely go away afterwards. Other thing that's going on that's going to kind of impact from now going into 2021 is some of the runoff elections, some of the lawsuits um, surrounding the election. So just make sure that you're paying attention to those news items as well. Even if nothing comes of it, it's still something to throw a hiccup in the market, a little speed bump. So pay attention to that. And then also policy. So I know you guys probably don't watch C-SPAN. It's one of those channels that sometimes people feel like, oh, it's just thrown in there. Nobody watches it. Nobody cares about C-SPAN. But every once in a while, just put it on C-SPAN, even if it's for like 5 minutes. Just look to see what they're talking about. Look to see what they're voting on. Look to see what they're doing, because no one should have the excuse of, I didn't know that was being voted on. I didn't know that's what they were talking about, because C-SPAN literally has cameras inside of the House and the Senate. So you can see what they're voting on. You can see what they're talking about. Like, for instance, today, when I put it on there, they were voting on the U.S. sending firearms to the Arab Emirates on one C-SPAN, and then on C-SPAN 2, they were talking about rights for Indian reservations. So they do talk about stuff that's relevant to our lives, stuff that's relevant to the economy. So, like I said, even if it's just for 5 minutes, just put it on there, see what they're talking about, because it's definitely our chance to get our chance to see what they're talking about. Um, some of the other things I was going to go over and talk about with you guys. The first is, so in the group chat we talked about the water futures. So I wanted to go over what water futures are, how it's kind of divided out, and what they're actually meaning and talking about whenever they say water futures. So the water futures are based off of a California water index that's already been established. This index was established in 2018, and they talked earlier in the year about becoming a futures and actually becoming a part of the futures market with the CME, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. So that was when we first talked about it. You first heard me talk about it earlier in the year, and we just kind of grazed over it because it wasn't something that was official, it wasn't in stone. They didn't actually have everything in place at the time that they needed to be a part of the futures market, but now they do, and they're on the futures market. And so what you're looking at are contracts. It's the contract price for agriculture. So I've seen a lot of people kind of raise their eyes and like, wait, water's trading on the futures market, but it's a really helpful thing. So when you think about everything that you buy each and every day, it has a cost attached to it. You're purchasing it for a price. Well, on the other side of that, the manufacturer has a price, which is what's coming out Friday, the producer's price index. So um, every manufacturer has a cost that they pay for items. And then there's a markup that happens on that item so that a profit can be made. So what you're looking at is how much are agricultural producers, so how much are the farmers going to be paying for water in the future? That's what they're voting on. That's what futures are. It's saying how much am I going to be paying for this item in the future? So the farmers, this is really for farmers, is really for the farmers and the consumers. So the farmers are saying, okay, I want to make sure that I get this water for, I don't know, yesterday it was like $508. I want to make sure that I get this water for $508 at a future time. And that future time is set out by the contract. Whatever time frame they buy it for, they can guarantee that even if water prices in California go up, they're still going to pay that $508 because they locked in that price in that contract. So in a contract, there is 10 acre. Um, it's blocked out kind of weird. So it's like 10 acre feet of water. But it's essentially about 3.26 million gallons of water. So a farmer can say, I know for a fact that I'm going to be able to get 3.26 million gallons of water for $508 in February of 2021 or December of 2021. Whatever the contract is, whatever the time frame is that they set out, they know for a fact they'll be able to get water at that price. How does that help the consumer? How does that benefit the people? So whenever you go and you buy almonds, when you buy bananas, when you buy oranges, that farmer had to use water. They had to pay for the water that helped to grow that fruit, vegetable, nut, grain, seed that you're eating. So if they know for a fact how much they're going to pay, they can keep costs consistent for the consumer. They don't have to jack up prices, um, so that, whenever it gets to whatever company is going to brand the item, whether it's Sunkist or um, planters for nuts or whatever, when it gets to them, they don't have to add a markup. Or at least the markup is not coming from the farmer because they kept their prices consistent. I've heard some people say, well, how do you know it's not city water? How do you know it's not the water we drink every day? Well, that water is already being traded. Like, that water is being traded now for decades. That's how Coca-Cola and Pepsi can go into municipal areas and bottle that water, and the people the people don't see a return, but the city gets to get a jump on how much Coca-Cola and Pepsi are going to be paying for their city water to bottle and, ship out or whatever the case may be. So, municipal water, the water that comes out of your tap, the water you use to bathe, it's already being traded. It's been traded now for a while. So you don't even have to worry about the manipulation of that, because if it was going to be manipulated, it's being manipulated now. This is for farmers and for the stability of farms in California only. So this doesn't affect the breadbasket, which are like the Nebraska, Kansas, the states in the middle of the United States. This isn't for Florida and their oranges. This is solely for California and their almonds and their grapes and their wineries. So, wanted to cover that. Also, DoorDash went public today. Um, DoorDash, the Target opening price was $102. It did open at the Target opening price was $85. It opened at $102, and then at some point today spiked up to like 180 or so, kind of leveled off in like the 170 area. Airbnb has their IPO tomorrow. Um, Couple of other things, if you're looking for, or some for those of you who have asked me about U.S. manufacturers or companies in the U.S. and you invested in either Ford or GM. GM released the Hummer today. It's the all-electric Hummer, sold out within the first 10 minutes of the release. All of them sold out. The vehicles retail price is like a little over 100K. Um, Obviously, in the midst of a pandemic, there is still a demand, and that's one thing that Congress, in addition to some of the other things we need to pay attention to, is talking about, because if there's still a demand for a certain class of item, that means that people have money to spend, which is why they're not really willing to give out a personal stimulus check during this stimulus package that they're trying to create. Some people want it, some people don't. Some people say that people are hoarding money. They just don't want to spend, and we need to entice people to spend the money. And then there are others who believe that people really don't have the money and they do need the money to spend. So that's part of the debate, and it's things like that that happen that really make Congress question whether or not to give out a personal stimulus check in this stimulus package that's coming out. So I started sharing my screen. I was just going to flip to next week, as a reminder to you guys that we really, really, really need to pay attention to next week, because next Wednesday is going to be super heavy with news, along with next Thursday. Um, Next Thursday is going to be heavy during London Open, because we get a lot of flash manufacturing and services news out of the Euro, and we get it out of the GBP as well. But I'm sorry, I don't know what I said, but next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, that starts it off. Um, but then going into Wednesday afternoon, we get a ton of US news. Everything that comes out from 9:30 on is a lot of US news that we really need to pay attention to. Is going to be retail sales. So these retail sales are going to help carry us through what we call the retail season, getting us through the end of summer, part of the fall, starting to head into the holiday season type spending. January is really going to help us to see what spending was like for Black Friday, Christmas, and then a little bit of spending afterwards. Um, then the really big thing is going to be all this FOMC news. The thing to remember about this news is that it's all coming out right at the end of New York session. So this news is going to be at 3. Normally it's around anywhere from 12 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Jerome Powell typically does all of his stuff around 2. This is at 3. So just make sure you're aware of that because it's around the time that the market's closing. So the market's typically around this time doing a little bit of reversing on the day. It might not do that on Wednesday of next week. So make sure you're aware. And then Thursday of next week, a ton of Swiss franc news that we typically don't have on the calendar, but they have 4 news items in one day, which is super rare to have one, let alone 4. And then GBP. We're paying attention to GBP because of Brexit, because of all the fine touches and details that's going into Brexit right now. Definitely paying attention to that. So anything that you hear from the GBP between now, next week, end of the year, those are all things we definitely want to be paying attention to. Um, the thing with Brexit, I just want to throw it out there really quick before I turn it over to Mr. Levels, is that for the past long time, I'm just going to say for for the longest time, the only thing we've talked about with the GBP is Brexit. So when Brexit is over, what is there going to be to talk about with the GBP? So the GBP might get a little stale, a little boring. I said might because you never know. There's always something that's going to drive the markets. Um, could be COVID because they were the first, along with the EU, to kind of roll out this COVID vaccine. So um, pay attention to all of that. Pay attention to Brexit news, Congress news, presidential news, COVID news here, and lockdowns and curfews, all of that stuff. It's a lot to keep track of, but trust me, once you've tuned your ear into like key phrases and stuff, you won't, not everything will pick up, and you won't focus on everything that you start to see and hear. You'll just start looking for certain keywords, key phrases. And that's the thing about the news. You just want to pick up on those keywords, key phrases, follow those things because everything else will definitely be a distraction if you follow it around in the news. So, thank you for listening. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Levels so that he can get started with the
Cool beans. Appreciate you, Corman. Great job as always.